Okay, so we've had some questions on the homework, and I want to help answer some of those questions for you. And I'm not going to give the answers here, but I want you to have examples to follow. Now, you're going to be given some figures, and these were the most questions were asked were about the figures that they give you. And they don't give you a number on the side, but they ask for the perimeter of the figure. Now, we know how to combine like terms, but a lot of times on a test, you're not going to just be given a question that says combine the like terms. You're going to be given a figure. You're going to have to figure something out using that knowledge of how to combine like terms. Now, if I just gave you a box and I said, what's the perimeter of the box? How do you find perimeter of any figure? It doesn't matter what the shape is. Well, you just add all the sides. But if they give you a number like, or an expression 3x plus 2, that's a binomial they're giving us here to, in this example, and I just made this up. But if I'm asking you to find the perimeter, you're still going to add all the sides. Now, just because I wasn't given a number doesn't mean I can't still add all of these sides up. Just make sure that you are adding every single side. And it helps to just think of this when you're given a question like this in algebra. Think of it in terms of what would I do if I was finding the perimeter of any figure. So let's say if this was a box, if I gave you a box, and let's pretend that this is well drawn here. But if I gave you a box and I said, well, this side is 10 feet, this side is 10 feet, this side is 10 feet. So is this one, what's the perimeter of this box? Well, you would just add all sides up and you'd say, oh, the perimeter is 40. Well, that's essentially what's happening in the homework, but they're not giving you one number. They're giving you two terms. Okay, so just use that information to fill in the blanks. All four sides of this box, those little lines mean that the sides are equal. All four sides would be the same in this example, okay, because it's a square and they show us with those little lines that all of those sides are the same. So all sides are 3x plus 2, and if I add all four of those up, I just have to make sure that I'm adding like terms, like for example 3x. These are considered like terms because they both just have an x as a variable. I don't know what x is, so don't try to get a real whole number out of this whole thing. I'm not trying to get like one number. This is a binomial. I can only add the like terms. So x could be, anything. But since there's an x here and an x here, I can say, okay, well, 3x plus 3x plus 3x. I can add all of these 3x's together, and that's going to give me 12x total. 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 is going to be 12x. Now, I cannot combine the 2's with the 3x's, or with anything that has an x, but I can add all of the 2's. So my perimeter, the expression that represents the perimeter of this box, would be 12x plus 8. And don't try to add that and get another number out of it. That's as far as I can go. Those are not like terms. But that's an expression that would represent that specific perimeter. Now, the figures in the homework were a little bit different, some of them. For example, number, I believe this is 10. Yeah, you have this that kind of looks like a house. I'm going to add all of the sides of this up, and I'm only going to add, say, like 14x down here at the bottom of this figure. I can add 14x to 12x to 6x, but look at the sides. 12x plus 3 on the right, it's going to match on the other side. You got those two lines. That means that the other side's also 12x plus 3. And you got 6x minus 4 at the top. The side on the left is going to be 6x minus 4. I can add those two. I can combine all the terms that have an x in all the whole numbers, and that would give me my final answer. So I'm just finding the perimeter, adding up all the sides, essentially just combining like terms. Okay. Now, there were some terms or questions where we were asked to simplify the expression or give something that has the same value, and some of them were just very straightforward, very simple questions. For example, number 1 up here at the top, they said simplify by combining like terms. Well, I can add the 5x and the negative 2x. Those are like terms. That'll give me an answer. I can add the 3y and the 8y here and combine those like terms and get an answer. My expression is going to have two terms in it. Okay, I should not get an answer that has an xy because you can't add x to y. So that 14xy, if I just added all those numbers, 5 plus 3 is 8. Add 8 more, you're going to get 16. Then subtract the 2, you're going to get 14. And some people are going to think, oh, 14xy. But I can't add, x and y are like apples and oranges. I can't say 5x plus 3y is 8xy. That's apples and oranges. But I can say 5x and minus 2x is 3x. Okay, so pay attention to which terms are like, which ones you can actually add together. So let me clear this out real quick. Don't save that. All right, so if I had a set of terms, and let's say I had 2x plus 3y plus 5x plus 4y. If this was a bunch of terms and I had to simplify this, I'm only adding the x's to the x's, and I can do that, and I'm only going to add the y's to the y's, and I'm not going to try to do anything else. That would be my final answer, and it is okay to get an answer where there's two terms. Don't think that's impossible to do. Now, we have some that were separated by parentheses, and that's common when you're talking about adding like terms. And make sure when you get to like number 3, x squared cannot be added to x. If 4x squared could be added to 8x squared because they're both x squared, but don't try to add things just because they both have an x. Those are still not like terms, even though they're very similar. That's just distributive property. I would distribute whatever's outside the parentheses here on these to what's inside the parentheses. Just make sure you understand how x's work when you multiply them. So if I were to say 2x times 3x, if I was distributing something into a parentheses, 2x times 3x, 2 times 3 is 6, x times x is x squared. Anything times itself is going to give you that number squared. Like 2 squared is just 2 times 2. X times x. It also works the same way, x squared. And if I just distribute 2x times 2, that gives me 4x. I can multiply unlike terms. I just can't add unlike terms. Okay, so when we're doing that, and that's review, something you kind of already expected to know. But you're going to see some combining like terms, like, for example, this is number 8, where you're asked to add these two expressions. Well, I'm just going to add the terms that are like terms. For example, I've got 3x squared, and in the middle right here, this is the operation plus. It tells me what I'm doing with all three of these. So I've got 3x squared. I'm going to add anything else x squared over here. So 3x squared plus 2x squared. I know my answer is going to include 5x squared. Okay, and you've got a negative 3x plus a negative 5x. Just watch your signs on those, because when I add two negatives, when you add two debts, you just get a bigger debt. So kind of like marriage. You got negative 3x, negative 5x. That gives me negative 8x. All right, now for polynomials with a negative in the middle, if I have a negative right here, that means I'm going to be subtracting anything on this right hand side. So I'm subtracting a negative 2x squared. So remember, when I subtract a negative, it becomes a positive, because you can't take a debt away without giving something. So if I'm taking away a negative, it becomes plus 2x squared. So I'd have 4x squared essentially plus 2x squared, and that negative 5x minus a 3x. So I've already got negative 5x, and I'm taking 3 away. So watch your signs when you're following this operation here in the middle, so you kind of know how that is going to work out. Let's see. All right. And coefficient, that is just the number in front of a variable. So if you see any questions about coefficients, and they ask, what is the coefficient of x? Well, the coefficient is just the number in front of x, whatever that coefficient happens to be. Okay, so if I am looking for the coefficient of something, and in this case, they're asking us to find the coefficient of x. Well, the coefficient here would just be 5. Okay, that's just the number in front of x. Now remember though, if there's no number in front of x, the coefficient of x, if you don't see anything, it's understood what they call the implied 1. It's understood that that's 1x. So they don't put the 1 there, because you can see that this is just an x. Now if there's more than 1, they will use a number to show, okay, well there's 2 x's now. But if there's not a number, it's an implied 1. And the same goes for if I were to say, for example, have a negative x. Now, it's implied also that there is a 1 still in front of that x, so that's negative 1x. So if I asked you for something that has a coefficient of negative 1, it wouldn't look like negative 1, it would just look like negative x. This is what it's going to look like if the coefficient's negative 1, and it's just going to be an x if the coefficient is positive 1. So keep it simple when you're talking about these things. Coefficient is just the number in front of a variable. All right, thanks for your questions. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to send those to me at any time, and hopefully I can get back with you. Thank you.